Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike. And before you get too sucked into this awesome interview, do us both a favor and like, subscribe, and share this amazing piece of entertainment because I am here with the one, the only, Zender!
Hi.
How are things going, man?
Things are good. Things are good. Things have been a little quiet lately, but honestly, I think it's better than the burning
The
trash
alternative.
fire that has been a lot of the previous couple years for pretty much everyone.
All right, well, I hope it hasn't been too quiet that we can't fit in a laugh with your favorite dad joke.
Oh, okay, right. What is the difference between a well-kept man on a bicycle and an unkept man on a unicycle? A tire.
Uh, oh, I was going I was going in that direction, but I was like, he's too tired. I was like, nah, that doesn't quite make sense.
Oh
I was
man.
on the right
Yeah,
wavelength for
you were
once
getting
in my
there. You were
life,
getting there.
though. I was doing it. Woo! All right, man. Switching from the hilarious to the insightful, what
Mhm.
is your favorite underutilized word?
Serendipity, specifically serendipitous.
Oh, I love serendipitous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so good. I find myself just saying it on like the regular. It's just like so much of life, so much of our circumstances, human, beings is like just a serendipitous, just coincidence. It's lovely.
Yeah. It's like it's the happy coincidence word,
Mm.
and like it's nice and it's fun to use. It's a little difficult to use like with someone. I'm usually using it when I'm talking about something.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's one of those words where it's like, oh, it's a fun word, but it's also like, I don't want to use like something too weird here.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's also like great because it shows the human experience, right? Or like it helps you like the more I use it, the more I realize
Mhm.
that so much of our existence is just like happenstance and that we shouldn't take ourselves and our actions necessarily too seriously, but just embrace the variance, the variety, and the kind of happenstance that we just like fall into.
Hmm.
Like so much of it is just out of our control and we just like, I posted the other day that I want, like, if I ever write a memoir, it's going to be called Slipping in Serendipity. So much of it
Oh,
is just like, whoops. Oh, I found myself, in the right job with the right people. I met the right person.
yeah.
Like everybody talks about finding the love of
That's
their life. It's just like, yeah, it's like you didn't have anything to do with it.
that's
You
fun.
weren't
That's
at
fun.
the
It's
you weren't at the helm.
I appreciate the alliteration there,
Thank you, thank you.
the visual imagery.
Always alliterate.
Yeah, bit of a little
Apples. I got nothing.
slip and slide of opportunity.
What would you say, my friend Xander? What would you say is your biggest everyday temptation?
Oh, everyday, everyday temptation. Um, so there's uh, it's really dumb. My brother gets Pocky all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just growing up. And I it was never one of those things I bought. It was just something that was always in the house.
Yeah.
Um, so every day I wake up, whenever I'm like looking for a snack, my first instinct is to like try and get Pocky. And if I don't have it in the house, I'm like, I don't need to leave and buy it. But a part
Yeah.
of me is like, I need to leave right now and get Pocky.
Pocky must be obtained.
Yeah, and it's
Exactly.
it's really unfortunate, but it's one of those things where like it's the most random, just like little things you that happen when you're growing up, where you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is just normal, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's not anymore, and your body, your mentality just can't deal with that.
Totally.
But yeah, so like sometimes I'll wake up and be like, I should get Pocky, and then immediately I'm like, no, I have things to do.
So it's almost less of a temptation and more of just like a conniption. It's like your body's just like,
yeah,
must obtain
I'm conditioned. I'm conditioned at this point, Gabe.
It's kind of like that's your version of like the 35-year-old American woman who's like, I need a baby. It's like there's like it has nothing to do with like what they think. It's just like mental conditioning of this like very, you know, sexist male dominated society. It's like,
Right.
you make baby. She's like, I make baby.
Yeah, there's
Growing up it was, we always have Pocky, we always have Pocky, and you're like going out and obtaining it,
yeah,
making sure that you've got a thriving supply.
I mean, like, you know, I'm aware of my place in the system here. You know, like I know
I'm a Pocky consumer. That's
yeah, it's like I know what's happening. You know, I'm not being played by the capitalist, you know, like big Pocky, you know. Big Pocky. Sounds
if you think
delicious.
Pocky's big here, just go to Japan.
Yeah, right, dude. Oh, dude, I want like a massive. I'm sorry. We're going on. I'm gonna start talking about Pocky the entire time.
He's just gonna leave the podcast. I had to go get Pocky.
Yeah, right. Ran out. I did.
What movie? What movie will you never skip when channel surfing or just like flipping through Netflix or rolling down YouTube?
Oh God. That's tough because there's a lot.
Anyone recently that you found yourself, oops, I got sucked into it again?
Right. Yeah. I think there's immediately two that come to mind. That's The Fifth Element.
Nice.
And The Princess Bride.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This exact situation did happen a lot.
Multipass.
Growing up, yeah. The Fifth Element was just always on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah,
just
totally.
Constantly for like a solid like 5 years. It's like the
like,
go-to.
They bought the
movie.
rights and they were going to use every ounce of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I watched so much of that movie. And you know, at one point I was like, oh yeah, you know, I know this line and this line, and like now I can't quote anything, but like you turn it on and I start watching it and I'm like, oh, it's happening. Yeah, so you know, it's a good time. It's a good movie.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. So much about that is just like forever. It's such a cult classic, and that, like, I mean, both like that Princess Bride as well. It's just like for different genres, it's just like endlessly quotable. You'll always see T-shirts that have them on it. It doesn't matter. It's gonna hold the test of time too visually, which is kind of nice. It's not trying to do something that it couldn't quite achieve. It nailed on every aspect, like the bits, even like the kind of like spaceship alien biz. It was like, even for being what, like 90s, early 2000s, I think.
Yeah,
it was just like it really did just hit all the visual marks too. So that's not going to be like one of the things you look back at and you're like, woof, you know. It's just like, no, like it checks out still.
At the end of the day, it took itself just seriously enough.
Yeah,
you know, there's nothing in it where you're like, oh, this either seems like unbelievable or this seems, you know, like too fantastic. It was like, okay, this is a romp, but it's a romp with heart, you know.
Yeah, it's got great writing, great casting, great music. Yeah, just it checks all the boxes. It is a banger.
Yeah, it really does.
Speaking of bangers, growing up, what was your favorite book as a child?
Oh, my favorite book as a child. I was a child who did not read. I don't feel like that's
perhaps as a middle schooler or early high school young adult. What was it? What is a book that you remember being developmental in who you are as you are now?
Oh man, funnily enough, Holes. Yeah. For a couple reasons actually. So I didn't read a lot growing up. So I watched the movie and then I was like, oh, there's a book. You know, the wheels turning that like movies can be made from books. So I read it. I think it's one of the first books I read, all the way through. Um, and it made me look more into the author and all that jazz. Um, there is an interview that the author of that book did where he said that he started writing it in his free time, and he would go and have dinner with his family every night and then randomly be like, so I finished a chapter today, and that's all he would say. That's all he said.
Oh wow.
And his family would just be like, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
No idea what he's talking about, no context, nothing. um and then he's just like, okay, and eventually he got all the way to the point where he was like, hey, so I'm publishing my book. And they're like, oh, you're what? um and it yeah, it really, really stuck with me. And even now, when I think, oh, I want to do this big project, I really want to, get this thing off the ground, or I want to do this other thing, my mind always comes back to that interview and thinking, oh, okay, I can just do one part right now, and it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if it takes me like a year. I think it took us something like 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, you just you bring it all together eventually. You just have to keep working at it.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and I think that message also comes across a lot in the book, and the idea of fate hand in hand with personal perseverance and want, like your own work goes in hand with what some consider destiny.
Yeah.
um it was really interesting. It was really cool. It was a really awesome motivation for a young me.
That's yeah. I can totally see that. Just also there's so much of, your kind of underutilized word like in serendipity in that book and about that book that I didn't know about. It's like it really hits all those spots.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so cool. So I'm gonna ask you to imagine a small nightmare, if you will.
Okay.
If you had to evacuate your house, what's the first non-living thing you'd grab and rescue to safety?
Computer. Easy. Easy.
Grab that tower and run for the hills.
Well, I have a laptop right now,
Okay, even easier.
uh, which makes it a lot easier. And I mean, like, unfortunately, I feel like that's the answer for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Um, because just so much of our lives. I hate to really dip into that pandemic well, but so much of our lives has become so entrenched in being able to stay online, and having that connectivity, from job applications to a lot of work, specifically a lot of creative work, um, editing, a lot of art, a lot of music. Um, it's used to process and distribute, to connect, and it's the kind of thing that is almost indispensable now. You just
Yeah.
kind of assume that everybody has either a computer or, at the very least, a smartphone that is able for you to connect. And it's like, this is my life lives here, and that's not in the
Mhm.
sense of being like, oh no, how sad, his life's
Yeah.
on a computer.
Yeah,
um
exactly.
yeah, and
All how
it
things have
just,
changed.
yeah, it's the reality, I think, for
Yeah.
most people, is that their lives are on a computer. Your house burns down, I have a lot of things here, I have a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
um I'm not someone that has big emotional attachments to stuff.
Mm.
um I can get more of it if it's gone, that sucks, because I had to spend money to get it. But it's gone. It's
Yeah.
they are things. And I think my computer is the only thing that's more than just a thing. It is a necessity at this point. And if that's something you consider good or bad, that's a different conversation. But it is currently, my lifeline.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's one of those things that has changed from this place where, you like looked around the internet, you played video games or whatever as a kid, at least for me, and now it's like the main mode of communication, the main mode of achieving any work. It's like everything. It's kind of like the I don't want to say arbiter of contact, but it really is like there's so much that just transpires through it and like stays in it. It's kind of like the gatekeeper to the world is our computer.
Right, because
So it's
you
like be
you
without it, you are kind of shut out. So yeah, I totally see what you're saying.
and I mean you because you move from it being that game entertainment system to a work item, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still that fun, play video games on here, connect with friends thing. Um, but I think we've really melded as far as
Hmm.
the utility of it,
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's kind of like to kind of go back in time. Well, it's kind of interesting. Like growing up, bicycles are they're this like piece of freedom. You go, you ride them with your friends. You do tricks. You have all this fun on them. But then I don't want to say after that's all done, like it's some phase because some people continue to do that. That's like their way of interacting with their friends
mhm.
well later into their life. But like for a lot of people, it becomes like a mode of transportation. It becomes like economic. It becomes like this thing that they do for exercise, and it starts off in one thing and becomes another. Just kind of like we were saying, what computers are. They start off as like, depending upon when you were born. Like for me, it started off as like this like piece of like escape gamery where I was like, oh, I could play video, like, I play games, and like this is the way I could like not be involved with the BS that was like reality at different times, or just like a way I could have fun with friends without, the way I could search things up, and like there it was one thing and it became another as time like went on, and it still is the other. Like I still play games on it, I would still
Right.
ride a bike for fun, do tricks or whatever, but it's interesting how it kind of evolves and becomes bigger as time goes on. It doesn't like stay just this one thing.
Yeah.
Coffee cup stays a coffee cup for its
Yeah.
whole entire life.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
doesn't start like thumb wrestling with me at any point, thankfully. Otherwise, I'd never have a drink again. Do me a favor, Xander. I mean,
Mhm.
need you to clear your mind.
Done.
All right. Now, what thing comes to mind when I say underrated?
Oh no, I cleared it too much. Head empty. Oh man. Underrated. Um a film. I think it any time underrated or anything like that pops up, I immediately think of like movies and films.
What movie comes up?
Uh the Man from Earth.
I have not heard of this.
Yeah, it's funny because I loved it for so long, and it lately, I think the last few years, has started to take up and started to like build a little bit more steam in uh certain circles. It's slowly becoming that movie that people will be like, oh well, have you heard of, it's like, I bet you haven't
Hmm.
seen, which is a little unfortunate, uh but at the same time is nice that it's getting a little recognition. um
Sweet, yeah.
yeah,
This is the 2007 Man from Earth.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Is
the Man
it
from Earth.
interestingly enough? It looks like there's one from 2017. It's
Yeah.
from the Man from Earth Holocene.
Yes. Okay, so about 10 years later they made a sequel to it.
Yeah,
It's
wild.
not great.
The
But the original is
first one,
amazing. The first one's amazing.
underrated.
So basically, a teacher, a professor at a university is
Mhm.
moving and didn't tell any of his friends. So his friends show up, his fellow teachers, to help him move. And the
Mhm.
entirety of the film, except for the very beginning and the very end, pretty much take place entirely in this dude's living room.
Oh, cool.
And it's just him telling his other professors that he is immortal and that he is actually a like a caveman, and has been alive for, you know, however long, and it works almost as a thought experiment.
That's cool.
Because yeah, because like they'll ask him questions, and they'll go through everything, and it's like, okay, so if this was real, how would it work? How would it be real?
Hmm.
And there's just these little things here and there, and it's this really interesting piece, because you really think, wow, I mean, it could be real. It could happen, you know, like
Hmm.
an air of, you know, reality to it, which is really um really interesting. But the entire movie is basically a conversation, and it's gripping, and it's really well done, and it speaks to the ability of just being able to have a good script and enticing actors, and be able to just like bare bones it down to just that.
Mm.
Um, Now it's not everybody's cup of tea. I've shown it to a few friends that have either fallen asleep or have been like, "Well, I should get going." Um, but I have shown it to other people that really appreciate it, really love it. Um, the ending is not something I'm a huge fan of. It is my one gripe with the film that several of my friends have as well.
Mm.
However, the journey is worth it. So
Just like
yeah,
life.
yeah, exactly. You know, oh wow, that's a little dark. Um, but yeah, it's a
That's so
good
cool.
film. It's a good film. I've always been a fan of the immortal man story.
Hmm.
You know,
This.
the where does our humanity lie if we lose our commonality of death? You know, it's real. It's fun.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
that's an interesting way of thinking about it.
yeah,
That is so interesting that like that is the one thing that we all share in common, right? You know, that
yeah,
we all
yeah.
eventually
Honestly, truly, you
cease to
know.
be. That's crazy. All right, well, going from something a little less heady to something a little bit more headachy. What's your favorite industry secret or term that's only used in your line of work that you'd like to share with us today?
Oh, okay. Um, so I do a lot of different work, freelancing here and there, specifically in editing. Um, I have my favorite. How open are we to cussing on
Oh
this?
yeah,
Yeah.
fucking fire away.
Oh, awesome, perfect. um, I think it's two. My absolute favorite is frame fucking.
What
Um,
is frame fucking?
okay, so I'm glad you asked. I wouldn't have explained it. Um, so when you're editing anything,
Hmm.
um, you're taking out big chunks and splicing them together,
Yep.
and then you're taking out little chunks, and you're kind of moving those around. And there will come a time, um, when you're editing a film or a commercial or anything, where you will literally be sitting there going back and forth between 3 frames between cuts,
Hmm.
and you'll be deciding, do I take out these 3 frames, do I add a couple frames? And you'd think okay, it's literally like a couple frames, you know. There's usually, well, depending on, you know, what you're filming in, but usually we'll have like 24 frames a second, right? So you're
Hmm.
thinking, what is the difference of me cutting out like 3 frames from the shot before it goes into another one? And it is just wild that there is a difference.
Hmm.
There's a sense of pacing and of um like it's like it's like silk, you know. You run your hand over really high quality silk, and it is so smooth. But if there's a nick on it, you're gonna feel that. And you might not be able to see it, but as you're running your hand over it, you can feel if there's a bump or if there's a thread pulled or something. And that is the reality a lot with film, specifically with viewers, is that a viewer will know when something's wrong, when something looks weird. And there have been times when I've been watching a movie and there will be a cut and I'll be like, huh, that was a completely serviceable, well done cut. Why did it feel weird? And I'll go back on it and I'll look at something and I'll be like, oh, they held it a little too long.
Yeah, a beat too long. Or,
it's just one beat, or it's like, and it's that, and it's it is a terrible like mental state to be in when you're sitting in front of a computer going frame by frame and being like, oh man, do I take this out?
So when you're doing that, so what aspect so frame fucking is when you're just over analyzing a cut like indefinitely to ad nauseum, so to speak.
And and just the tail end or the beginning of it, and that's it's
So when you're doing that to kind of get sense of if it's right or if it's wrong, you're just like playing it back like over and over and over and just watching it with, watching it without, watching it with, watching it without? Is that your way as an editor to kind of feel if it's right or if it's wrong, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So you basically do that and then you stop and then you watch the whole thing. And then no matter how long it is, and then you go back to it and you switch it the other way and then you watch the whole thing. And then
how much do you do it like by moment, by scene, by movie? Like, are you like changing that tiny little bit and then watching the whole entire movie, or watching the whole entire scene, or watching just like that little
it's like the whole scene.
Okay.
Sometimes that's easier than not. Some scenes are very long. But it is, I mean, it's for me, it's necessary. For a lot of people, it will be like whatever. And the reason it's necessary for me, and this is just on a personal note, is that cut is going to play along with the rest of the scene. So the rest of the scene is going to inform that cut as well. The emotion, the speed, the action, the voice, the script, it all informs what the cut is. But at the end of the day, you get to choose what it is, how it works. So if you have one cut and then you take a couple frames out and you realize, oh, now this cut is faster than everything else in this scene, you have to realize, okay, is that something you want to draw attention to? So it will always be this little, that's why it's frame fucking. You're fucking with it, as much as it does to you. Because it is the end of the editing process, really. You are so in tune with this piece. You've done all the big sweeps, all the everything, that you're literally just checking frame by frame, and it is.
So for instance, to compare it to something else, like if you were a carpenter, this would be sanding it to a finish. Right. This would be making sure that everything is exactly right. It's it's smooth where it needs to be smooth. If you want it to be jagged, it's jagged where you want it to be jagged. But that everything is right. This is like the final step before taking out onto the showroom.
Yeah, pretty much. A colorist puts on lacquer, sound design polishes. Like it's a team effort at the end of the day. But one part goes wrong, the whole thing kind of falls apart.
Yeah, you don't want to have the last thing you want to have in film is a moment that pulls. Yeah, you don't want the audience to like notice that you missed something.
Right,
That
but
is
you
like,
also don't want it to be your fault.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know, because like if a movie is not great and something happens, you know, but it's like it's the sound guy's fault. Like you're like, oh no, this sucks, but you know, it wasn't me.
Whew, yeah, dodge that bullet.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, man. Is there a piece of advice you've been told over the years that has made the biggest impact on you, or that you find yourself pondering even to this day?
Yeah. Yeah. Um it was Gail. Um so Gail runs, I don't, or ran, I'm not 100% sure if she still runs a children's theater in Salinas.
Okay.
Aerial theatrics. Um Great place, learned a lot. Um it's a fun area to be. A lot of the actors that are in the peninsula, you know, did things there.
Mm-hmm.
Um One of the things I learned from her was that you cannot you hmm, okay, how do I put this? Okay, you are only able to choose how you react. You have no other power over other people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can't decide that you wanted someone to tell you something a certain way, or that
Mm-hmm.
you wanted, you know, something to be said or done, or something. You can only, the only power you really have in a situation is how you react to something, what you choose to do. And that's, I mean, great advice for acting, you know, to act is to react.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also great advice for taking criticism throughout my life. You know, you have somebody tell you something and they say this is wrong, or I don't like this,
Mm-hmm.
or you know, this is, you know, this or that, or 100 different things they can tell you. You're gonna be the one at the end of the day that gets to decide, okay, thank you for that feedback. It's dumb feedback, but you know, thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
um
exactly.
you know, you get to decide how aggro you want to be. Do
Mm-hmm.
you want to start a fight with this person, or do you want to be like, okay, you know what, I understand that you're just trying to give advice or to give a comment. You
Mm-hmm.
might not have worded it in the way I would have liked,
Yeah.
but I can't control that. I can't control how people speak, or the experiences that led them to wanting to communicate in that way. So that's always kind of been my thing, you know. It is difficult. It's hard to take criticism. You know, it's hard to sit there and have somebody tell you how this thing that you love you did wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. You know, they can be like, oh well, this is how you can make it better, and that's true. But it
Mm-hmm.
it also means that it was not good to start.
Yeah.
Um,
This kind of reminds me of the Serenity Prayer, which I believe is prayed in AA. I'm not entirely sure, but it's the God grant me the serenity, accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, the wisdom knows the difference. It's kind
mm-hmm.
of like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when, like, just like, look, this, what, like, knowing that only you can be in control of your reaction. Like, what, like you're saying, it works great for acting, but also works great for life. And it's kind of like that top down. It's like helping you be in the moment, but above the moment, see the moment, and like know where you are, where they are. It's like one of those kind of cosmic knowledge kind of vantage points that
Right.
like that
Yeah.
kind of wisdom is asking of you and like allowing you to find the steps on the ladder to reach it. Right? It's like that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's such a great way of putting it, and such a great way to learn that too. Learning that in acting, where you like are at, I don't know about you, but the times that I've acted, it's like it's where you're the most malleable as a human being because you're
Right.
kind of playing somebody else, and so
Yeah.
much more receptive to the idea of a foreign thought,
Yeah,
because it's not
yeah,
you that's hearing it, but you
and
are the one that's hearing it.
yeah, and I mean, even for criticism when acting, it's like I can I've taken direction when acting a lot better because it's, oh well, this is someone I'm not.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they're helping to tell me how to be the person that I'm trying to be. But those same words, you just apply them to life, and it's the same thing. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be the person I want to be, and
Hmm.
I'm just getting, advice for that. Now, is it gonna always be good advice? No. It the big trap of criticism is that a lot of people will think, oh well, if you're not taking the criticism, that means you're just too full of yourself and don't want to listen. And it's like, okay, sure, sometimes that's true, but the reality is that you have to be the owner arbiter of yourself and your art.
Hmm.
Like someone will give you bad criticism sometimes, and
Yeah.
you have to be able to stand up for yourself and say, no, that's dumb.
Yeah. It's just as
and
likely that
and
you
and
get
just
good
be open.
criticism as that
Exactly,
you get bad
exactly.
criticism.
And you just
So
have
to
to
like,
be open.
if you listen to everybody's criticism, you'd be flipping a coin as to whether like it ended up, that you
Hmm.
were, doing something good or doing something bad. If everybody, if every YouTuber checked the, comment section and listened to everybody's input, some of them would end up committing suicide and plenty of them would end up quitting, doing YouTube, because that's what a lot of people recommend. So to listen
Yeah.
to all people and not have, kind of any sieve. Obviously you can like, take somebody's criticism in a way that is respectful versus a way that's not. Like you can hear somebody say banana shit to you and be
Mm.
like, I hear you. I appreciate you giving me your, your thoughts. And then just like, but in the back of your mind, not coming out of your face being like, fuck that. And just like, mentally throwing their, recommendation in your, garbage bin and being like, not listening to that. That was stupid, but still, choosing to, choosing your response in a, appreciative manner to show that, because, we can give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that they were trying to be helpful and just had a stupid idea, but it came from like a good place.
Right. Yeah. And you do your best to try not to judge, and
Exactly.
and try not to be like, okay,
We try.
you're someone I don't like or don't
Yeah.
respect, so I'm not going to listen to what you say. It's
Hmm.
like, and because good criticism can come from anywhere. you
Mm,
know
totally.
um and again, it's being
One
able
of,
to have that control over yourself and that decision making when you decide, okay, I want to listen, I want to improve and get better, and I will only be able to be responsible over that. And that's the only thing I can do is make that decision, decide how I react, decide what I do. And then you just get to choose who you're listening to and what you think is good advice, and build those relationships where you will find people you trust. I have asked people I trust, hey, does this cut look good? Hey, does this, you know, piece work? Does this, shot look okay? Not
hmm
because I'm not confident, but because I know that they will give me good criticism, whether I
hmm
like it or not, because I know them as a person.
yeah. It is kind of reminds me of one of the best pieces of advice I got that was the hardest to hear. Was it was in like the first screenwriting class I took at CSUMB. I was
Mm,
taking it from JP, and it was basically everything everybody gives you, you should try once, at least. Like every
mm,
single time, even if the idea is stupid or you think it is stupid, which is the most
mm,
important thing to remember, is that something isn't intangibly and indefinitely and empirically stupid. You think it is, and you might be right. You also could be wrong. But to take every bit of it, like criticism and advice, and look at it, and if they're offering something, to change, to, you can always, you have the original. Don't erase the original. Just take the original, make a copy, and then change that copy. And then if you like it, that now becomes your, your new, working piece, and you move forward. And if it
mm,
sucks, Yeah, throw it in the trash can. You go back to the original, you make a copy, and you trust me. No, but that it was, don't ever let the source dissuade you from trying an idea. And like,
Yeah,
I think quite immediately, I got a great idea from somebody that I think and still think is a gigantic moron. But that idea ended up being good and fixed like one of the problems that I couldn't pull myself out of the piece to see.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I
So
mean,
that's
it happens.
yeah,
So
that's an
it's
anecdote from
also
me.
yeah, that's also a great way to look at that.
Right? It's hard to see. It really is like one of the. It's still super hard for me to hear from certain sources, and but it's like
Mm-hmm.
definitely cross to bear.
Yeah.
So that's my anecdote for the day. Given the opportunity, what is your favorite personal anecdote to tell?
Favorite personal anecdote. Um. So, um. My best friend Sam. He sits me. I'm sitting. I'm going. I'm in his house. I sit down at the dinner table. Um. I don't even think he was in the house. I just, I go there to eat sometimes. Uh, um,
I
he
just rummage through his kitchen.
yeah,
That's what I
exactly.
do. It's my
Sit
thing.
down, eat. He sits down, looks me in the face, and he's like, "Yo," I'm like, "Yo," and he's "You want to go to China? You want to go to Disneyland?" And I'm like, well, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, we're going to Disneyland Shanghai. Me and my girlfriend." Oh, okay. They weren't dating at the time. I always forget. Uh, but they should have been. That's not here nor there. So I'm like, yes, of course, I would love to go to Shanghai Disneyland. Um, so we just go to Disney, and within a month, we're just like out and flying. Really lucky time in my life in which I both had the money and the time to be able to just do something like that. That does not happen a lot. Um, so we're in Disney, and I bruise my toe the first night.
Yeah.
And I go downstairs to the lobby, and I find somebody there because the people working there they knew enough English, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I asked the guys like, "Hey, do you guys have an ice pack?" And that's when I realized that the term ice pack is very American.
Mm-hmm.
Because the confused look I got from him, she's like, "Ice pack." I'm like, "Yeah, ice pack." He just keeps repeating the word to me. He's like, "Ice pack." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I like show him my foot, and I limp a little bit. I'm like, "Ice." He's like, "Ice, ice pack." I'm like, "Yes, ice pack." And we start jumping up and down a little bit. It was really cute. It was really cute because like this man's like in a suit. He's like 30 something. Jumping up and down with me
Yeah.
as we were both like, "I sue." um and he takes me downstairs to the kitchen. Hands a plastic bag to one of the people there, and he's like, "Ice." I'm like, "What?" So that they fill it with ice, and he like hands me this bag full of ice. He's like, "Ice pack." And I'm like, "Yeah, ice pack."
We did it.
Yeah, and I think the whole ordeal took something like 20 minutes. Uh, but it was a wild kind of like just cultural like coming together, where it's
Yeah.
like, here's this term you have no idea of. Ice packs I guess aren't huge.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah,
People
it
just don't
was
stub their toe in China, my guy. That's not.
yeah,
It's just. It's
yeah.
not in their lexicon.
But yeah, it was great. It was just this really wild, out of the blue just moment I was able to have with this guy, just this connection. Um and I think I took a picture with him before I left. We got a selfie. Um
That's awesome.
but yeah, it's one of the few times in my life where I think I was able to just find the humor in a situation with someone else, because I feel like it could have been just as easy to be frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
My toe really did hurt.
Yeah.
I been walking around the whole day. You know, I was tired. He was tired. It was like midnight. Um, and I think there's that space in life where, you know, where you, again, you know, you decide, how do I want to go about this? You know, what do I want to do? And I think just the absurdity of it all, of being like, I'm in China. Look over an ice bag. This dude can't understand me. And we just laughed, and it was just fun that we got excited, and it was just it was a really oddly heartwarming moment, you know.
Well, other than knowing that ice pack in broken Chinese English is Isupak, what is your favorite little known factoid?
Little known factoid. Now, when you say factoid, you mean factoid and not fact?
No, no, wait. Am I about to learn something? Is there a difference between a fact and a factoid?
Oh my god! I guess this is my little known fact. So, a factoid is actually a fact, or what people would think is a fact, but is actually false. It is what it has been repeated so many times that people believe it to be true. Um, for example, I'm from Chile, uh, uh, and a lot of people think that toilet water spins a different direction in the southern hemisphere. It does not.
It does not.
Toilets all spin the same way, but it is one of those things that a lot of people heard, and a lot of people kind of like, you know, dissipated this information, that they're like, oh, it's like true, it's a fact, but it's a factoid because it's this little bit of misinformation that a lot of people just assumed was true because it was repeated so often.
Okay, so I looked this up, and while I love the definition of factoid, according to Oxford, factoid is... Wait. Okay. What the hell? Never mind. Cut this part out. It literally says two different things on the definition thing. What the fuck? No, it says a brief or trivial item of news or information.
Mm-hmm.
Then it says an assumption or speculation that is reported and repeated so often that it becomes accepted as fact. Fucking which is it, Oxford? What the hell? Why would you have two conflicting things as the two definitions posted?
I think factoid may have started as one and became another. That happens a lot with English. Yeah,
so
a word will be used. Yeah, possibly. A word will be used in a different way for so long that people will assume that's also the meaning of it, and then it just gets incorporated into the language. You know, language evolves. It you know, it reshapes. So sometimes we'll have conflicting definitions like that. Which one's the original one? I don't know. But in my life, factoid has always been these little kind of like falsehoods that seem to be true.
Well, congratulations, Xander. You changed this name a bit. It's now no longer what's your favorite little known factoid that sounded fun. No, now it's what's your favorite little known fact. A lot less fun sounding.
I'm so sorry.
Thanks.
I ruined it.
Forever leaving an impact on the Preposterous podcast.
Right? Yeah. Wow. I guess that's I did come prepared with a fact.
That is so awesome. Did you have another one as like, or were you going to immediately start Googling really quickly once I asked that question?
I actually came prepared with a factoid, which is the toilet bowl one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I remember, did you ever, there's this British show that I'm so waspy that I just can't get enough of British, like, panel shows. And there's one called QI, stands for quite interesting.
Oh.
And the whole point of it is to talk about, effectively, factoids, dispel them, and talk about truths. And like, they bring up this idea, they ask a very obviously answered question, right? And then like it's obviously not that easily answered. A bunch of people answer, bells will ring, you know, and like, oh, that's, you know, haha, we got you, that's not what the actual answer is. And then they'll divulge the information, which is really cool. And one of them was about the toilet water, and that
Oh,
you
yeah.
can actually make it swirl whatever way. It doesn't go one way or the other.
Hmm.
It's the way that like the drains are set up, or that you can like it's the way the water naturally pours throughout the earth that makes it swirl one way. But
Yeah.
if you force it, if you want to, you can make it go the other way.
Yeah, you can force it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the force of water falling into that space
Hmm.
in that um direction is like stronger than the Earth's rotation to spin it the other way naturally.
Oh, that's so crazy.
Um, but
It
yeah,
sounds
yeah,
so huge and bombastic when you say it like that too. Stronger than the Earth's rotation.
yeah, exactly. It's
This faucet is a badass motherfucker.
yeah,
Just like
it's
find the
not
Earth's
yeah,
rotation.
it's not difficult to fight the Earth's rotation on
It turns
top of
out
the
the
Earth.
the Earth the Earth's rotation's kind of a bitch when it comes to faucets.
Yeah, yeah, it you know. Oh man.
All right, moving on from
Hmm.
this ridiculousness. Fill in the blank for me. This weekend was so great. I spent 13 hours.
Cooking.
Ooh, what we cooking?
Um, couple things. Cuatro quesos, dos fritos, which is from Psych. But Binging with
Hold
Babish did a
on.
recipe.
Yeah, cuatro. So 4 cheese, dos fritos. 4 cheese, 2 meat, or
4 cheese double
four?
fried.
Double fried. Damn it!
Yeah, and
I was gonna figure that out. I think maybe probably not.
it's basically mashed potatoes with cheese inside. Then you fry with like panko breadcrumbs outside.
Oof,
Um,
that does sound diabetically delicious.
oh, it's really good. It's really good. Got some pork shoulder, kind of slow cooked that, and did some pulled pork sandwiches with
Mm.
apple coleslaw, which was so good. Um, and
I'm losing a couple toes just thinking about it.
yeah, what else we had? We had crostini's, fig butter and prosciutto, and also tomato mozzarella basil ones, and
Mm.
mac and cheese. It was a whole thing. It
There's a
was great.
there's
It
a
was a
term
great
for that,
weekend.
right? When you put mozzarella with tomatoes and like, isn't there a name of a dish?
Yeah, there's I don't know, but there's a name for it, I'm sure. So yeah, that's pretty much where my weekend went.
um, it's called caprese salad. It's
Oh,
mozzarella with basil and tomatoes
hmm.
and vinegar. It looks like, yeah, balsamic vinegar.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, caprese. I'm sure I'm saying that just like they would in Italia. All right, so moving on before I get too many people to unsubscribe.
Hmm.
Can you think of the first or most impactful memory of when you realized you weren't so alone in your struggle, or that you were more like everybody else than you had initially realized?
Oh, um, wow, that's a rough one because if I say college, it makes it seem like I thought I was special my entire life.
Hey man,
um,
I had many of those moments in college, and I went back to college at 30. So you are
oh
in
man.
very okay company to relinquish said
Well, that's
facts.
that's that's nice. Um, I think less. I think it's not less. I think it's more feeling like I wasn't so alone in something.
Hmm.
Um, so when I went to CSUMB for um the film program, basically, the cart,
Hmm.
I first transferred there as a history major to be a history teacher. Um, the transfer day, I was taking the orientation class and
Hmm.
saw the amount of work for the the
Oh
SBS
yeah.
stuff, all the research papers, all the all the stuff, and I sat there, and everybody had left the room, and I was still just sitting there, and I was like, wow, I really don't want to do this. Like, it wasn't even oh man, I'm really motivated. So like, when you love something, you'll work through the
Hmm.
difficulties of it. And I was sitting there and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. But I had done theater and theater directing and all that stuff in my junior college. So I walk up to the advisor and I'm like, "Hey, does this school have like a theater program?" And
Hmm.
they looked at me and they were like, "No, but we have a film program." And in my mind, I was like, "You know what? Close enough. Uh, where is that?" And they were like, "Oh, it's in the next building over. They're starting in like 2 minutes." And I was like, "Oh, perfect." So I walk over and I sit down in this orientation. My previous class or orientation class had something like 35 people in it.
Hmm.
This one had 4. And immediately I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I'm making the right decision here.
Hmm.
Um, but the advisor started going through all the classes and all the material and all the stuff, and I'm like, wow, okay, I really want to do this.
Hmm.
So I switched majors that day, about 2 weeks before the start of classes. Um, whew. But I think it was a good decision because I think it's the first time in my life that I met and felt like there were people more passionate than I.
Hmm.
And that might seem a little egocentric, but the reality is that in your own head you are the main character of your story. There
Yeah.
is every artistic person I have ever met needs to have an ego.
Yeah.
You need to believe that you are really good or you are great, because if you don't, you will immediately be destroyed by self-doubt and criticism and your peers. And your peers are great. They will try to lift you up at every moment. But you can see something someone makes and it can destroy you because it's so good. And you're
Hmm.
like, wow, we're like at the same place and I can't do that. And it was really this like big shock to me because I felt like I'd always been kind of like big fish, little pond,
Hmm.
where I'm like, oh, I can do this. I had met people that I was like, yes, they have a greater technical ability than I do in certain things, but they were few.
Hmm.
And I got there, and all of a sudden, everyone's better than me.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And the reality wasn't that everybody was better than me. It was that I was finally seeing people that were just as passionate as me, but were willing to put in more work, more time, more hours, more of themselves into something. And it showed. It reflected.
Hmm.
I was really, really, really able to confront what passion is and how that affects work. And I mean, I made some great friends and I learned a lot, not just from the teachers, but from the other students, because I realized, wow, we can have the same technical ability, but you can tell somebody, here's a script, here's a location, here are the actors, film this to 10 different students, and they will film you 10 different pieces. And will they have similarities? Yes, but they will be wildly different because vision are the intrinsic artistic vision, the way somebody sees the world is so unique to them that you can't compare it, but you can see it. And I was so closed off to seeing that.
Hmm.
I was so sure that, oh, they did it this way, but the way I do it is better.
Hmm.
there was definitely an inflated ego built off of me at the end of the day, I think, feeling I wasn't good enough. So I made myself feel like I was the best, because if I wasn't the best, then I was nothing. And it was this whole thing. It was this big kind of like twisted knot in my head that had really created a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was really freeing to be able to see people that didn't know what they were doing and then figured it out and made great stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, it's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to be bad. It's okay
Mm-hmm.
to create a lot of bad stuff so that eventually you make something good. And it was really, really cool to see all these creatives and all these people make work that was just so brilliant, and not all the time.
Yeah. It helped you, like, it sounds like it kind of helped you, like, understand, like, I mean, going back to the metaphor of, like, big fish, little pond, it seems like it helped you do two things of, like, find the right size body of water for the fish that you were, and also understand what kind of fish you were and how big you really were. And it wasn't that you were necessarily too big a fish for the little pond before, but that it was too little a body of water for what kind of fish you were.
So
Sounds like
my
saying the same thing front to back, but I
my
think
my
that.
my favorite thing to that goes along with big fish little pond has always been goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll grow to adjust to the body of water they're in.
Oh, interesting.
So I've seen some massive goldfish. Now don't put goldfish into like big lakes or body of water. They're completely invasive. They will eat everything. Um,
Oh, I
little
didn't know
little
that.
fish fact. But um, goldfish will get bigger in bigger bodies of water. So I think the thing is that if you keep yourself in an area where you're not being challenged, you
Mm.
will never grow. And you will become very good at being in that area, but you will never become better. So I think throwing yourself into deeper waters will ultimately only ever be good for you. You know, I had a lot of teachers that had a very sink or swim mentality. That it was kind of like, okay, here you go, here's the info, go, and you
Mm-hmm.
figured it out. Because if you didn't, that was it. You weren't going to either complete the assignment or you weren't going to do it well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they didn't help you, but they didn't hold your hand. And I think I had a lot of kind of hand holding and a lot of, like, oh, well, here's how you do it, and here's this. And I was really good at taking instruction. So I was able to really follow those details and do it technically correct.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was great to kind of, just be inspired, I think is the long and short of it. Kind of just be able to be around talent and be like, wow, I can do that, but also I can't do that. And that's okay.
Totally. Is
Yeah.
there a moment that you look back on in your life that fills your chest with pride or brings a tear of joy to your eye?
Um. Yeah. Um. In my junior college at MPC, um, I um I was taking a directing class, a theater directing class. Um, and most times they will tell you to stay away from music. Music's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I did not listen. Um, I had 3 or 4 songs in this that the script had no music for.
Mm-hmm.
It was all like supposed to be freestyle rap. with a couple bits of text that the piece had. It was wild. I should not have attempted it. Um, but I did. I think it's the start of when I really tried to challenge myself.
Mm.
Um, I think it was definitely kind of that turning point where I was like, I'm gonna do something that I think I might not do well. Um, and it was difficult, but I will never forget. We put this performance on for our classmates. That was it. It didn't go on a big thing. It didn't anything. I remember putting it on and it running the whole. I think it was something like 13 or 15 minutes. We had 10 minutes tops. Um, and I was like, whoops. Ran the whole time. And I sat there and I was so proud of it. And I was like, wow, I I did that. And I hadn't felt like I'd created a lot of stuff. I wasn't doing film, I wasn't doing, a lot of that stuff. I wasn't doing photography yet. Um and I think it was the first time I felt what I would feel several times again at CSUMB. I felt, wow, I made that, I created that. I was part of something. I was a cog
Hmm.
that produced and created what I just saw. And it was only going to be seen once, and it was only going to have an audience once, and it would never be that same cast or the same time and practice again.
Hmm.
And it was so fleeting, but it stuck with me, that feeling that it didn't matter if no one else saw it because it happened. And we put in the work and we did it. And I was so proud of myself that later the head of the department that had seen the show, he was retiring. That was
Hmm.
he would watch all the performances. That was the very last one he saw. And he came up to me and he was like, Xander, I am so glad that was the last thing I ever saw. That was amazing. and
Oh,
and
that's
it
so
just
awesome.
it just validated all those feelings I already had.
Yeah.
Because like at that point I didn't care if other people liked it as much as I did, but it meant a lot that he did.
Yeah.
And I saw him years later, and he was like, hey, you remember that show you put on? Oh, I love that. And I was like, oh my god, he still
Sweet.
remembers.
That's awesome.
um but yeah, I think that just it really helped give me the confidence I needed to actually feel like I could challenge myself, actually do something good, and not
Hmm.
just do that kind of like, oh, as long as you memorize the material, you'll pass the test kind of mentality. You know,
Yeah.
the very safe, very secure, very, if I follow these rules, if I do these things, I will do it right. I will succeed. I will not fail.
Hmm.
And art in general has a lot of failure tied to it. So it was very scary to feel like, oh, I'm in this directing class where I've done a couple different other things, but it's all been very kind of like technically correct and not very out there, and very kind of like funny. Did a lot of comedy because comedies, I don't want to say comedy's easy, but like it's harder to fail at comedy because they're like, oh, it just wasn't funny. But they won't
Mm.
poke at any other thing. They'll just notice, oh,
Yeah.
the joke didn't land, not all the other technical aspects of it.
Yeah.
So it's easier to fail at comedy when you're young because you're not expected to get it right away.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just one of those things where I was like, wow, okay, I can do something difficult and succeed.
That's so
And
awesome.
yeah, it was great.
That's so cool. All right. Well, lastly, before we throw it to a commercial break, if you could have the listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
Probably Up by Lawrence. Now that's not Up. It is the whole title, Probably Up.
All right, and with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy the Totally Real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy Probably Up by Lawrence. Or, if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves podcast, Song Rex. It's a long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Do you ever find yourself sitting around with an emptiness inside your soul or larger than preferred vacuous space? Would you like to change that? I thought so. Now introducing Stuff. For when you have nothing to do but important things. Stuff. For when you're lacking personality and intrigue. Stuff. When the world has taken a pickaxe-sized chunk out of your heart. Stuff. And if Stuff no longer fulfills these needs, please don't hesitate to look into our life-enhancing product, Addiction. And we are back. I'm here with Xander. Xander, what is your passion?
You may or may not have guessed it was editing at this point.
Maybe.
I may have gone on a little passion tangent about it earlier.
All that frame fucking.
Yeah. Yeah, editing, man. As you may have guessed, I've done some directing. I really love directing. Directing's great. Big fan of directing. I've done some photography. Photography's great. Love photography. But man, editing is just you feel like, I don't know, you feel like this weird, like, Dr. Frankenstein scientist sometimes, man. You you have your whole editing setup, and not most, but a lot of editors I know have something like 3 keyboards.
Jeez.
Yeah. And you have your main keyboard, and the other 2 keyboards are basically entirely made up for shortcuts. And it's a ton of macros and a ton of everything on different keyboards, and you're playing around with them, and sometimes they're used for different programs, and it's a whole thing. You usually have your screen, you have a large screen, sometimes you'll have like a color screen that's like color corrected, that's perfect colors for the screen. Yeah, it's usually multiple screens.
That's so cool.
You usually have you have a bigger one. You have one screen for, like, man, if I had just one screen for, like, just the timeline and just the video, like, sources, and then another for the video itself, and then another one for, like, files and stuff. That's the dream. And yeah, it just, you have kind of control over the vision. I think that there is no bigger factor in the either emotion or the intent of a film than directing and editing. Because a director will tell an actor, okay, this piece has to have, this high emotion, and they can pull that out of an actor, and you can have this tear jerking, like, they can be actually crying, and this, like, emotional scene where, they could be, like, holding their best friend as they're, like, leaving their mortal coil. And the director can be like, okay, well, we want it from this angle and this angle, and we need this, and so and really they can do their best to pull that through. But if you have that scene entirely in a close up of like one of the character's eyes in an over the shoulder shot, and that's it, that's the entire scene. It's trash. It doesn't work.
Go on.
Like it takes so much work to there are beats you can follow with editing. You know emotionally when you need to hit. You know by the script what you need to hit. And when the scenes change, and like somebody will talk to you like, oh, well, I'm going to switch to them, and it informs a lot of your decisions. But artistically, you also hold a lot of power. I've had a lot of people assume that editing is just, oh, well, you're just splicing all the takes together, and I mean in a very basic sense, they're not wrong.
Boilerplate.
Yeah,
they are technically correct.
They're technically correct, but there is there's so many choices you get to make. You have so many shots to choose from. You can get recommendations from a director that say, oh, this shot is the one we really liked. And you'd be like, okay, and you look at it and you try it and you see it and you're like, okay, cool. But this other shot that you had has a little bit more headroom and matches up with this other shot, and it has so it you really, really get to choose the performance. You get to you get to choose the emotion. You get to choose, oh, well, we did this take a little bit more silly, but we did this take more serious. And you're like, okay, well, we're gonna do the serious one, and then we're gonna do this other thing. And it just, you have so much control over a piece. And there are so many technical aspects to it, between like techniques of how to transition certain areas and how to really cut things together. You see a beginning editing class, and then you see an editor out in their field, and a lot of the things you see in the beginning editing class are not bad. They're just the assumptions. You see, oh, this is what a cut is supposed to look like. As an audience member, you're like, oh, this is just the oh, you just switch to here and here. You see the surface level of it all, and it's not until you do that and you see your cut back that you're like, wow, that's awful. That is trash. What? How? Oh, okay. Here's a take. I don't know how hot it is. Have you seen House of Gucci?
I have not.
Okay. The editing's really bad. It is technically a good film. The acting, the performances, the script, it's solid. It is a solid film. It is not a good movie. And the editing really killed it. Like it really killed it for it. It oh god. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen a big movie that had like editing problems. And I think it's because editors are so in tune with a piece that it can be difficult to see mistakes because you have it is looked over so many times that, like, and you have your assistants and you have your main editors and you have the director that comes in and takes a look. You have so many eyes on it, that it usually doesn't happen, but it can, and you can tell. I think there's almost nothing more glaring in a final product than a bad edit. And you can have sound issues, but you can play it off. You can play off a lot of sound issues. You can redub a lot of stuff. You can replace a lot of sounds. And if a
Mm-hmm.
bad sound makes it into a movie, a lot of people are willing to ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, early YouTube with like awful sound, you're willing to ignore a lot of that because it was fun. Um, and it had very little editing. Early YouTube had very little editing,
Yeah.
and I think that's because people realized that it was difficult. I don't think it's because people didn't want to edit their pieces. I think it's because some people tried and then were like, maybe we just do it all in one take.
Yeah, just throw it up there.
Just throw it up there.
So I've got a question for you. As somebody who has directed plays and
Hmm.
short films, do you think you would enjoy, do you enjoy editing your own direction, or is it better when it's in two different like kind of posts,
Ooh,
two different positions?
ooh, ooh. That's You can. I will tell you something. You can tell immediately if a director is an editor.
How so?
The way they compile their shots, the way they look at their shot list, the way that they decide how to do their takes is different. Um, because a lot of the times you inadvertently do two things. First, you film for your edit. You have an idea already of how the film looks in your head,
Mm-hmm.
and you're taking the shots that you think you need for the edit. Um, you do a lot more pickups. You do a lot more like B-roll. You will do so much more. You and I've seen editing directors that either edit or have done editing, and the amount of times they'll be like, okay, well, we want to also pick up this here, and I think we also need this shot from behind, and we need this shot over here, and you get so much more coverage. You get
Mm.
so much more coverage. Um,
So
so
this still begs the question: would you prefer to be the director that edits his own product, or would you
right.
prefer to just be
Oh
one or the
God.
other?
Mm. I I really think it depends. I I'm fine editing my own work as long as it's short because I think it's the same thing of not people not like people don't like hearing their own voice
Yep.
because it sounds different to what it sounds like in your head because it reverberates different because of your
Hmm.
skull. So to hear it without that reverb, really weird. I think
Yeah.
it's the same thing. A lot of actors don't like looking at their performances.
Yeah.
So I think it's the kind of thing when you're
Looking
editing,
at you're
yeah,
looking at your own creation.
exactly, you're looking at your
Hmm.
work, and it's really easy to feel like, oh man, I really wish I'd done this different or looked at this different. You're just not as objective about your own work.
Yeah, you get polarized one way or the other. Either you're the
Yeah.
best director since, Kubrick, or you're
Uh
the
huh.
worst since your, 2-year-old cousin found their mom's iPhone open or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. It's actually the reason I know a couple directors that when they're doing their shots don't do shot lists.
Hmm.
They will literally just go out and be like, okay, I think we need this and this and this and here, and we're just gonna freehand it, and we're just gonna like shoot and go, and it works for some people, and I think a lot of the reason they do it is because it they're trying to do their best to not have their takes be informed entirely by how they want the final product to look like.
Okay. So that way they're a little bit easier,
Uh huh.
a little bit more willing to like have the editor chop it up
Yeah.
because it's not like so formulated in their brain. That's
Right.
interesting.
Exactly. Like if they're editing it, they will do
Hmm.
that more. Um,
Makes sense.
Yeah, because
So,
editors will fight with directors.
oh yeah.
You will want to throw down. You'll throw a hairy armpit here and there, and
Hold on, a hairy armpit?
yeah, you make a shot bad so that the director will point it out to fix it, and they'll let you keep all the good shots.
You intentionally make a
You
red herring so that
intentionally,
you can
yep, you
gain the
intentionally
aspect of
put
control
something
you
bad,
want.
and you're like, all right, I really like how I did this cut. I'm gonna put this bad thing like in front of it or at the end of it, and that's the thing
Oh,
that they
okay.
will point out, and then you fix it because you don't care. You knew it was bad.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Yep.
You just show it in contrast so that your shot looks great and they want
Uh-huh. Because I mean, honestly, like I some directors have no idea what they're talking about. And um well, I'm not gonna go in somewhere and be like, oh, let me tell you how to do your job. But that's literally the director's job. Is to be like,
it.
I need to come in here and tell you how to do your job. That's literally what they pay you for. Um so
So if we can
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
we can rewind for a second, when did you get into editing, and when did you like did you start? Was your first experience with editing just even knowing it was a thing and like really getting to know what it was? Was that at college, or did you find out and like know a little bit about it beforehand?
I think a little bit beforehand. It was like high school stuff. Um I think nowadays it's so much easier to look at things like editing or sound design or VFX, um, because it's a lot of programs are so much more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, industry standard for so long was Avid,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is prohibitively expensive and requires a workhorse of a computer to run.
Yeah.
Um, and I think now you have, you know, and I mean these are um all like NLEs are that are just more accessible to people. You used to have such a technical knowledge of things to work, and now it's just like, oh well, here's some editing software on your phone, cut, paste, move some stuff, you're good.
Yeah.
um and I think so the concept of being able to do that is ingrained so much more in people now, um that it lets you know, oh, maybe there's more detailed ways to do this. And I used Sony Vegas for the longest time, um because I had access to it. We're gonna leave it at that. um it wasn't a great editing system, but it worked. It had the things that I needed.
It did its
um
thing.
yeah, so I had a couple things I just threw together. I would find a video on YouTube and I'd be like, oh, this video would look really good with this different music. And then I'd put it on. I have a a really dumb intro to Casino Royale with a uh gloomy version of All Star to it that works really well. But it's stuff like that. It's the little, like, oh, here's a little silly stuff. Here's a little thing I can throw together. Um, and it was funny because I started to edit some of these things together. Um, to not go too far off topic, me and my friends do a yearly 24-hour Dungeons and Dragons game.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's literally an excuse to get together once a year. We all live very far apart now, so it's always great. We used to stream those games
Mm-hmm.
to an audience of pretty much no one, but it was fun. Um, the big point of it was that we would record them, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, cool, I can edit. I can edit one of these. I can edit my game because we did a whole bunch of games within 24 hours. So I DM'd for like 6 or 8 hours. And I was like, I can do this. And I took it all out and I looked at it and I was like, wow, that's 8 hours of footage. I did not realize how big that was.
Mm-hmm.
So I cut it down and I put it together, and it's down to an hour. And to me, I'm like, wow, that's great. I did a great job. It's down to an hour. Showed it to a friend of mine, Sam, again, who also is an editor. We kind of ended up in the same kind of track for that. And he looked at it. It was kind of funny. There were a few laughs. It was great. And it hit about 20 minutes. And then it like fell into this other thing, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is unnecessary. I can cut all of this. Um but I thought it was great. I thought it was so much fun. And
Mhm.
and he watched the whole thing, bless his heart. Um and he looks at me, he's like, yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah. A little long. And I'm like, yeah, a little, it was, wasn't it? And he looked at me, he's like, it's harder than you think, huh? And I was like, yeah, it actually is. Because I couldn't cut it down anymore. I'm like, I think that's also one of the problems, again, circling back to directing and editing your own work. You fall in love with it.
Yeah.
You don't want to not show parts of it because you were there. You were able to share that emotion. You were able to know what that meant to the people that were there. But you can't convey that to an audience. So you have to make that choice. Can I convey that to the audience? If you can't, then you have to drop the scene. You have to drop the part. No matter how great of a moment it was for you or the cast or your friends streaming it.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that was uh
Right. That's awesome. All right. Lastly, before we move on to the preposterous peeve section,
Mhm.
is there a misconception about editing that you'd like to kind of correct or inform on, or is there a favorite non-obvious aspect to editing that you'd like to kind of learn us about?
um oh man, that's two questions in
You
half.
got to pick one.
um
We're starting to run a little long in the tooth.
yeah, no worries, no worries. I talk a lot. I'm very sorry.
No, that's
um
it's great, but I'm worried about how much I'm trying to make sure we don't hit 2 hours.
oh yeah. I think it's do it. You can do it. Like it's not hard.
Mm,
It is like any skill. Any skill is going to be difficult to master. Any skill is going to have minutia to it. But anyone can cut and paste some stuff together.
yeah.
Like it's not difficult. Get DaVinci Resolve.
It's more daunting than it is
Yeah,
deserved.
exactly. Get DaVinci Resolve. It's a totally free software. The professional version is the one that you pay for. It has mostly for color grading, but it has a really robust editing software built into it. It is completely serviceable. It is great to edit on. It will teach you a lot of the stuff you need to figure out. It also has a lot of people around it. You can just go in and look it up on YouTube and be like, how do I do this?
Yep.
DaVinci Resolve. How do I do
Can
this?
can attest that is very much a thing that I did to edit my my
Yeah,
own thesis
yeah,
film.
yeah. And it's really great software. It's totally free, and it play around with it. Like just get in and be like, oh,
Yeah.
this is you will find out if it's something that interests you or not immediately,
Hmm.
because it will either be incredibly tedious or it's going to be really cool. And I think that's the big myth behind talent is just, do you pick it up fast? That's it. That's the difference. The only difference with talent is that they will pick up something. So they're always going to
Hmm.
be ahead of the curve. But that doesn't mean that if you don't work at it, you're not going to get there, or you're not
Yeah.
also going to be amazing. Your voice, the way you see things is going to be just as interesting as somebody that's really famous for it. It's just going to be different. It just, it's like, is it going to be something people want to see? Is it, are you going to be able to communicate your vision effectively? But yeah, I think it's just give it a go. Start it, try it. The bar for entry is so low.
Yeah.
It has never been more easy to get into editing. It
Yeah.
just get the software going, do it. Because like it used to be, you used to
Yeah.
study and have to
Used
go
to need
into
scissors.
yeah, you used to have to actually cut film and replace negatives. It was a whole thing. And then editing
Speaking of a
software
whole
was
thing.
blocked. So like, yeah, go for it.
Speaking of a whole thing. What? I don't know how that was supposed to be a transition. What is your preposterous peeve?
Whistling.
I wish
That's
I
it.
could
No
do
context.
I wish I could do the whistling from Family Guy, that certain whistle of that old man. Just like,
Oh God.
what's your problem with whistling, young whippersnapper?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I had a roommate that did it. And it's one of those things that like you you wouldn't think would bother you until you hear it all the time. Um because I sometimes need to focus on something or do something, as we all do.
Yeah.
I'm just hearing whistling from like the other room. And I walk in, I'm like, dude, can you stop that? He's like, what? The whistling. He's like, oh, I didn't notice I was doing it. I'm like, it's fine. And you just keep doing it. And it just, oh, it would drive me crazy. Um, we're still friends. Um, but it's definitely the kind of thing where he he definitely ruined whistling for me. Just idle, kind of just in a room whistling to pass the time. Immediately, I'm like, I'm going to need you to stop.
So, what if somebody started excellently whistling your favorite song?
I'll say that's different. That's different. That's great. That's that's a talent. That's work. Go for it. I'm talking about just the idle whistle in the like pass the time kind of like just waiting.
So you
Um,
can't stand the beginning of oh, what's that show from like the 50s? It starts off with like a whistle. Um,
well, I don't know what it is, but
the
yes,
Andy
I would
Griffith
probably.
show.
Oh God,
So like there's no way you could watch the Andy Griffith show.
no.
You just like run
I
screaming
skip
into the hills.
I skip the opening. Yeah, I skip the beginning of it.
But then you don't know where they came from.
I don't need to.
Like, but you can see them catch a fish.
Cliff notes.
Cliff notes. Uh, do you not are you not a fan of whistling yourself then?
Yeah, no, I don't enjoy it.
Okay. Was that before or after your roommate? You think that like
I think
did
always because I'm not good at it.
uh
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, we're going to head to our second ad break. But don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Xander is going to enter the lightning round. See you in a bit. Have you ran out of new stuff to do, rendering your life wholly unsatisfying? Do you have too much time on hand and have no idea what to do with it? Or are you just plain over this existence and wish for a plane with more intrigue? Might I introduce you to Addiction? Addiction deals with all these problems and more. Had to meet your significant other's parents and would rather not? Addiction. Had to go to work for the third day in a row? Addiction. Rent? Why not? Addiction. Addiction cannot be held responsible for your choice of choosing to imbibe in addiction. Any and all life-destroying fallout as a result of addiction cannot be legally pinned on addiction. But you're more than welcome to try. And we are back. Xander, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Lightning round? Yeah, yes.
All right, put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Xander, is there a god?
Yes.
Shakira's voice in Danny DeVito's body, or Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body?
DeVito's voice in Shakira's body.
Have you ever paid more for a meal than you made in a week?
Yes.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Terrible.
Would you rather give up cheese or naps?
Cheese.
Are hot dogs sandwiches?
Yes.
If you had the power to see the future but couldn't change it, would you use it?
Yeah.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Pineapple on pizza.
Kill the spider or get an adult?
Get an adult. Get a better adult.
Is there a is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
No.
Kanye.
No.
Which do you max out first? Intelligence, charisma, or strength?
Charisma.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Yes.
Are we alone in the universe?
No.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Ooh, Fran Drescher.
Are Cheez-Its addicting?
Yes.
Lions, tigers, or bears?
Oh my. Bears.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Make the food.
Is Marvel overrated?
No.
Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 duck-sized horses.
Would 16-year-old you be proud of yourself today?
God, I hope so, man.
Do you create your own thoughts or do you just listen to them?
Create.
If you have to only have one for the rest of your life, which would you choose? Rice or pasta?
Rice.
Is the internet a net positive for mankind?
Yeah.
Would you put your brain in a robot body if you could?
Ooh, yes.
All right. You're given the option of 2 superpowers. Would you rather be able to shapeshift, but only into a chair, or super strength, but you can only use it when you're super tired?
Ooh, super strength. I'm tired all the time.
If someone you cared about asked you to help them cover up a murder they had committed, would you help them?
Yes, and then use it against them.
Would you rather punch a capybara or hug a boa constrictor?
Hug a boa. Boas are delightful creatures.
Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1-hour time limit?
Yeah, I do it for like $3.
Congratulations, you survived the
Blood world.
But before we move on to your prize, I, like many other listeners at home, would like to now know, what is your favorite food?
Empanadas.
Those are bite-sizable. I can see that.
Chilean empanadas.
To be specific.
Yeah, not bite-sizable, but delicious.
All right, and now your prize. What lightning round question would you like to ask me and be turn asked of future guests?
Oh, okay. Simple. Would you rather be followed by a brass instrument, playing constantly, or a freestyling jazz singer that just keeps doing scat?
I've played brass instruments enough in my life. Give me that. Give me that
Yep.
sweet lullaby that only a tuba can give away.
Love that only tuba can suffice.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
All right, man. As we come to a close, anything you want to plug, recommend, places people can find you or your content?
Sure. Salazander_J on Instagram. Hopefully spelt in the description.
It will be.
I just wanna shout out my friend Sam again, who came up time and time again in my stories. Love you, man. Also my friends Kelvin and Josh. Both have been pillars and a constant source of inspiration in my life.
That's sweet. Well, thank you, Xander, for being my guest today. And special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And especially, I want to thank you. Yes, you, listening at home, wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify, and now Apple Podcasts at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our first Patreon patron, Sibella Yellow. And if you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud head on over to patreon.com/passionate people and preposterous peeps podcast. And remember, folks, if you bumble through a jumble, does that mean you danced your way through a vegetative area, or have you scattered the crossword? Either way, here's Wonderwall.